Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History, our nightly look back at a specific day in history, where we take a look back at the events of a day, the historic context in which those events took place, and the historic ramifications of those events. As always, if you have not yet, please hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon to be alerted anytime I post new content, and tell a friend. And without any further ado, this day in history, May the 4th. And on this day, long-time viewers of this channel will know I'm a big fan of British history, especially British political history, in relation to the office of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And today is one of those days where some big stuff happened. As we previously discussed on this channel, we discussed the winner of discontent and the no confidence vote against Prime Minister James Callaghan. Well, today is the day that the lady that was the leader of a conservative and unionist party who had defeated Mr. Callaghan in those 1979 elections, took office, and she became the first female Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. As I have noted before, there has since been another female Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, also a member of the Conservative and Unionist Party, and she left office a year ago, Theresa May. Thatcher would have a longer premiership than May, though. She would serve for 11 years as Prime Minister, the longest-serving Prime Minister of the 20th century. And she is a very controversial and beloved figure in politics of the United Kingdom. She is loved by people on the right and derived by people on the left. She is seen by historians and scholars as an above-average prime minister. I also you can attribute that to many things. This is not a criticism. This is just a statement of fact. Many of your academics lean to the left, and they may take some personal biases into that ranking, and there's nothing, as I've said, objectively wrong with that. We all have biases when we look at political figures, especially political figures whose lives we've lived through when examining them and been active participants in the political process during their lives. So I believe as we get further out from her premiership, that may change. She may go up, she may go down. There is no denying that economic growth grew under her leadership as Prime Minister, but it is also true that it was around the world in the 1980s. It was a time of great economic change. In 1981, her ideological soulmate, so to speak, would take office in the United States, and that, of course, would be Ronald Reagan, who she was very close with and had a very close personal working relationship. And she and he were very strident in their views against communism and socialism. You will see a lot of people use her quotes about socialism and in opposition to socialism when speaking of socialism. It is also important to note that the Labour Party that she was opposing as Prime Minister was a stridently socialist party, and they would not regain office in the Prime Ministership of the United Kingdom until 1997, when led by Tony Blair, who preached a third way, a new Labour, a less socialist Labor Party. And he and Gordon Brown led the party, and they have since fallen out of power after a long time leading the government of the United Kingdom from 1997 till 2010. And they've had David Miliband as the leader, and of course Jeremy Corbyn, and now have a new leader. And Corbyn was preaching a return to the old Labour standard, really ran against the new Labour mantra of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, and was preaching a return to the leadership styles of Mr. Foote and others who Mrs. Thatcher did battle with. They were the official leaders of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition during Thatcher's premiership. And as I said, Mrs. Thatcher was the first female Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. She was also the first female leader of the official opposition, Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition. And she held that post from 1975 until 1979 when she became Prime Minister. And she would be the leader of a Conservative Party from 1975, of course, then on till 1990. Some of her predecessors as the leader of the Conservative Party were not too thrilled with her. Mr. Edward Heath, who had previously been Prime Minister, and her she is a he and her did not like each other. She had a landslide re-election victory in 1983, and she really racked up a huge majority in that election. She would later be given a life peerage in the House of, which afforded her to sit in the House of Lords. She became Baroness Thatcher, and really, in later life, enjoyed the perks of being a former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. She would win a third term with another landslide in 1987. But she would squander that support and be forced out of office by her own party. A cabinet revolt in 1990 led to John Major becoming the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And he, of course, would win, as I've talked about before, one of those, a really upset victory in the 1992 election. And he was expected not only to lose, but he won a majority. Although a much smaller majority, he still had a majority government and would serve until 1997. So, she, as I said, was an ideological soulmate of Ronald Reagan, who was the United States President, who was elected to office in 1980 and took office in 81. In her later life, she had some health issues that made speaking in public quite difficult. And she recorded a eulogy to be played at Reagan's funeral before he died. And it was one of the more moving tributes during the service. And she attended his funeral services at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. And this is the Reagan funeral, we'll talk about this on the anniversary of this. I'm going to do a special video on it. But I watched the entire services from the moment Reagan died on that Saturday until he was interred um, that later that week. I watched everything. I mean, I was glued to the television. And I remember I even watched the people filing by his casket in California at the end. And I noted that Margaret Thatcher was one of the people that went by. She was not expected to attend that service, but she got with the Reagan family and said, this was an incredible friend of mine, an incredible leader of our times. I want to go to the burial service in California," and rode aboard the presidential aircraft with the Reagan family back to the Reagan Library in California for the interment ceremony there at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and Museum in Simi Valley. So she was very, as I said, devoted to the cause of her great friend Ronald Reagan. So after the winter of discontent and Mr. Callahan's subsequent no confidence vote in the House, her victory in the election, this was the day Margaret Thatcher took office and became the first female Prime Minister of the United Kingdom on this day in 1979. And that's going to wrap it up for today. I hope you all have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow. I'll see you back here then. I also want to note, I could have done a lot of events today. I understand that May 4th is the day that the students in Kent State, the 4 students, were tragically killed by the Ohio National Guard. And that is certainly a flashpoint of American history, especially in regards to the culture war and left versus right and elitist versus non-elitist and all manners of things. And I considered that topic as well. But when I saw this about Margaret Thatcher and knowing how much I've covered United Kingdom politics, in especially relation to this period in time, I knew I had to cover this. So I hope y'all all have a great night and a pleasant tomorrow, as I said, and I'll see you back here then. Good night.